Hey guys, tonight we wander into the muck-slick streets of Elizabethan London, where the air smells like open drains, cheap ale, and the faint, desperate hope of applause. You duck under the low eaves of crooked timber buildings, sidestepping a suspicious puddle that's definitely not rainwater. There's a rat, or maybe a very confident squirrel, darting between the legs of a street vendor hollering about pears that may or may not be more worm than fruit. Somewhere behind you, a lute twangs out of tune while someone argues loudly about whether Falstaff is better fat or fatter. And yes, you're headed to the theater. You probably won't survive this. Not because of a duel or plague or a poorly made roof beam, though all are solid threats, but simply because everything around you is so chaotic, so alive, so gloriously filthy, that your 21st century immune system would fold faster than an understudy during opening night. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the local time in the comments. Always fun to see who's still awake with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge into Southwark, the district where the theaters bloom like mushrooms in compost. The Globe. The Rose. The Swan. They're here, somewhere between the taverns, brothels, and the Thames herself. You can hear the city mumbling behind you, carts creaking, dogs barking, someone belting out a drinking song with more enthusiasm than pitch. It's late morning, but the streets still reek of last night's rain, stale food, and public relief. Southwark is outside the official jurisdiction of London's Puritan-heavy City Council, which means theatre can flourish here, along with just about everything else you're not technically supposed to be doing. You cross a narrow wooden bridge toward the playhouse. It's not what you'd call structurally reassuring. The beams lean a little too far to the left, and the thatched roof looks one strong wind away from giving up. But the scent of roasted nuts wafts through the air, mingling with sweat and smoke and, yes, someone's chewing raw onions. As you enter, the groundlings, those who paid a penny to stand, are already jostling for position. They're close enough to the stage to heckle, throw fruit, or catch the occasional spit from an overzealous monologue. These aren't silent, respectful viewers. They're rowdy, quick to shout, "Huzzah!" or "Fie!" or "Show us thy legs!" depending on the mood. Your shoes, well, let's call them shoes, though they're more damp leather flaps, stick slightly to the floor. There are no chairs for the cheap seats. Just a packed dirt yard and the hope that it doesn't rain. Above, wealthier patrons lounge in the galleries, fanning themselves with elaborate feathers and pretending not to notice the body odor rising from below. It's all part of the charm. Backstage, or what counts as backstage, is even more chaotic. Actors pace in tunics stained with last week's performance. A costume chest bursts open with musty garments that still carry the scent of someone else's sweat. Shared wigs hang on pegs, some missing chunks of hair, others crawling with tiny, well, never mind. Let's just say they're well used. This is where the magic happens. A playwright, maybe Shakespeare himself, is hunched over a rough table, quill flying across the page. Or maybe he's gambling in the tavern, trusting the actors to make do with half a script and a couple of vague stage directions like, "Enter ghost." You step over a bucket labeled "Stage Blood." That's really just pig's blood and red wine gone sour. The smell could knock out a small horse, but the actors dip their rags into it anyway. Realism, right? Everywhere you turn, someone is practicing lines, adjusting tights, or arguing over who gets to play the next nobleman. Not that it matters much. A nobleman's costume is just a pile of borrowed silk and velvet stitched into something vaguely impressive. But the illusion is everything. The city, for all its muck and madness, is hungry for stories. And here, in this half-legal, mostly chaotic space, stories come alive with flourishes, stumbles, and, occasionally, shouting matches between actors mid-scene. Historians still argue whether these early theaters were truly revolutionary spaces or just sophisticated distractions for the masses. What's clear is that they were the beating, often stinking, heart of popular culture. Plays tackled everything from royal scandals to fables, often sprinkled with fart jokes and double entendres that delighted the masses. And yet there's a kind of reverence here too. When the trumpet sounds and the actors step onto the boards, a hush falls. Even the groundlings, sticky cider in hand, go quiet. The world drops away. For a few hours, you're in Verona or Elsinore or a forest filled with fairies and donkeys who used to be men. You feel it, that strange, tingling thrill of performance. A shared illusion held up by planks, sweat, and sheer willpower. And if you look closely, you'll see a stagehand in the wings whispering lines to an actor who's clearly forgotten what comes next. You'll see a woman disguised as a man, pretending to be a woman, which is somehow less confusing than it sounds. You'll see wigs being switched between scenes and garlic cloves tucked into waistbands like Lucky Charms. Oh, and you'll smell things. Lots of things. Because deodorant hasn't been invented yet, and the actors are, let's say, committed, but not necessarily fragrant. You duck back out through the crowd, elbowing past a man with no teeth and a smile as wide as the Thames. He's humming a tune you half recognize, something bawdy and old. A dog chases a chicken across the street. Someone throws up behind a barrel. It's all beautiful, in a grimy, theatrical sort of way. The Elizabethan stage isn't just a place, it's a living, wheezing, garlic-scented creature of its own. And you're just getting started. You're back in the thick of it, slipping behind the curtain, well, the tapestry nailed up to keep the groundlings from watching actors undress, and entering the underworld of Elizabethan backstage life. It's louder than you'd expect. A lute being restrung over there, a brawl about costume rights over here, and someone yelling about who stole their only clean neck ruff. Spoiler, nobody has a clean neck ruff. You sidestep a collapsible stool, narrowly avoid getting powdered in chalk dust by the young boy playing Juliet, and pause to watch as two actors lean over a shared mirror, actually just a polished piece of metal, attempting to paste on eyebrows made of horsehair. Welcome to the green room. Except it's not green. Or a room. It's more like a corner with a stool and an anxious 16-year-old apprentice reciting lines while applying garlic to his throat. You heard that right, garlic. Turns out, many Elizabethan actors swore by it. Raw cloves. Sliced. Crushed. Stuffed into socks, tucked into tunics, or just chewed straight like some spicy theater mint. They believed garlic warded off illness, demons, and bad luck. But let's be honest, it probably just warded off most people. Audiences included. There's this unspoken code among the actors, though. If you smell it, you suffer it. Everyone's sharing the same wigs, costumes, and general sense of stress. Garlic breath is a small price to pay for surviving another night of open-air tragedy under a thatched roof and the looming threat of sudden weather change. You reach for one of the wigs. It's damp. The curls are stiff with sweat, powder, and possibly someone's leftover stew. These wigs don't get washed, by the way. They get shaken out, maybe combed with a twig, and hung up in the hope they dry before the next show. And everyone wears them. Nobles. Beggars. Witches. Lovers. Sometimes the same wig plays all 4 roles in one afternoon. It depends how quickly the actor can swap from monologue to maniacal cackling without losing too many hair tufts in the process. Historians still argue whether the communal wig sharing was born out of camaraderie, desperation, or just pure budget constraint. The real answer is probably yes to all of the above. You examine the costume rack. It's made from a broken fence rail. Dresses hang next to doublets, next to a bearskin cloak that, no lie, may still be warm. Actors don't get custom wardrobe here. You grab what fits, sort of. If you're playing royalty today, you might end up in a slightly mildewed gown that once belonged to Lady Macbeth 2 summers ago, now with patched elbows and a wine stain no one talks about. And the boots. Oh, the boots. They are never your size. You shove your feet into whatever leather husks are lying around and hope the wooden soles don't squeak too loudly during your dramatic entrance. The result? A stage full of limping nobles, mismatched lovers, and one guy whose tights are so tight that his performance is 2 octaves higher than usual. You overhear someone cursing in rhymed couplets about a missing codpiece. Another actor is pinning a garlic clove to the inside of his collar. For projection, he says earnestly. Someone else is oiling their vocal cords with warm ale and mumbling something about fairies stealing his good socks. It's chaotic, loud, and riddled with superstition. Like the ghost light. Not an actual light, of course. That's still a few centuries away. But a tiny oil lamp that some troops leave burning on stage overnight. It's meant to keep malevolent spirits at bay or, depending on who you ask, help the theater's ghostly residents run through their lines. After all, even phantoms deserve rehearsal time. You catch the scent of lavender wafting from a pouch hanging from a costume hook. That's not for freshness. It's to ward off the bad air, or miasma, thought to cause illness. Garlic, lavender, crushed sage, actors practically build little herb gardens in their breeches, hoping to survive another week of sweat, shouting, and questionable hygiene. Now someone's shouting, "Half hour!" Even though timekeeping is wildly inconsistent. There's no synchronized call sheet here. Just instinct, bells, and someone's uncle who swears by the position of the sun and how many pigeons are perched on the chimney. A younger actor nervously runs lines while braiding their wig. "To be or not to be, do you think I should cry or just twitch slightly?" they ask. You nod sagely, as if there's a right answer. Meanwhile, the resident clown, every troupe has one, greases his face with lard and flour to achieve that signature, pale, unsettling look. He snorts when you ask if it itches. "Only when I'm in love," he replies, then lets out a honk-like laugh and disappears behind the tapestry again. And there's always that guy, the actor who insists on staying in character all day. Today he's playing a gravedigger. Which is great. Except he's also helping dig out the latrine pit behind the theater, and no one's entirely sure if he's joking anymore. You peek out at the growing crowd. The pit's nearly full. Someone's already heckling the musicians tuning up their viols and sackbuts. Yes, sackbut. It's like a trombone, only clumsier, louder, and with more spittle involved. Up in the galleries, lace cuffs and perfumed handkerchiefs wave lazily. Down in the pit, it's all elbows and elbows. People are elbowing other elbows, honestly. It's warm, smelly, tense, and electric with expectation. A stagehand hands you a wooden dagger and whispers, "Don't stab with the point. Just wiggle it." You nod naturally. Another actor trips over a basket of fake severed heads, muttering something about how they always end up playing the corpse. A goat wanders briefly across the back corridor. No one bats an eye. Then the trumpet sounds. Everyone freezes. One last gulp of garlic. A tug on a shared wig. A breath held. It's time. You slip onto the stage, your borrowed boots creaking louder than your line delivery, and are immediately hit with a wall of smells: stale ale, roasted chestnuts, old sweat, new sweat, something that might be lavender but also might be mold. The air's thick. Every step you take leaves a faint footprint in the layer of dirt and sawdust that passes for floor covering. A dog barks somewhere in the pit. Someone laughs way too hard at a joke that hasn't landed yet. You swallow, hoping the garlic you rubbed on your throat earlier will kick in right about now. Not because it helps your voice, really, but because if your breath is bad enough, maybe your co-stars will back up and stop spitting in your eye when they say, "Vengeance." Tonight the play is one of those complicated revenge tragedies with at least 3 deaths, 2 mistaken identities, and 1 woman pretending to be a ghost who might actually be a ghost. Everyone loves those. Especially when half the cast has to swap costumes between scenes behind a curtain smaller than your average pub table. You deliver your lines as best you can, trying not to trip over your own scabbard or inhale any stray wig fibers. Someone off stage is shaking a sheet of metal for thunder. Someone else is coughing like they're trying to expel a demon, possibly the same person who's playing the Duke in 5 minutes. You forget a line but recover by dramatically clutching your chest and muttering something vague about fate. It works. The crowd erupts in applause, or maybe they just spotted a rat. Hard to say. Backstage, it's chaos as usual. Someone's applying fake blood made from sheep's lung and red dye, someone else is arguing about prop daggers, and the actor playing the fool is reapplying garlic paste to his chest for protection. From what? Unclear. But he swears it keeps the spirits calm. You try not to ask. Historians still argue whether this garlic habit had more to do with folk medicine or with stinking out your romantic rival before a love scene. Either way, it's pungent. And memorable. You hear a stage whisper. We're down a ghost. Apparently, the boy cast to play the spirit of Lord Elizabethan had to run an errand for his mum. Someone else is tossed into a sheet and told to float menacingly. They succeed in tripping over a cauldron. The ghost now has a limp. Improvisation. The audience loves it. Or they don't notice. Most are half drunk, anyway. Some are just here because it's cheaper than staying home with the kids. And one old man in the corner is deeply asleep, which, let's be honest, might be the highest compliment an Elizabethan actor can receive. Out front, there's a constant buzz, vendors hawking pies, beer boys sloshing pints through the crowd, someone yelling about oysters. Because nothing pairs with iambic pentameter quite like shellfish and body odor. A guy in the pit sneezes so hard he startles the chorus. You duck behind the curtain, grabbing a goblet from a tray of props and praying it doesn't still have real wine in it from the afternoon show. It does. It's warm. You drink it anyway. There's a moment of hush. The lovers on stage are about to kiss. You sneak a peek. The kiss is awkward, angled, and mostly cheek. Not because of modesty, but because the lead actress is played by a boy who's 14, terrified, and stuffed into a corset borrowed from an aunt. There's a mutual agreement not to talk about it later. And here's a fun tidbit. Most Elizabethan actors knew the general outline of the play but not always the full script. They got cue scripts, their own lines and the last few words before them. Which means every scene is a surprise party. For everyone. Including the audience. You hear a thud. Followed by a hiss. Followed by someone yelling. Where's the fake leg? Classic. The prop leg has gone missing again. It's crucial for the next scene, which involves a dramatic reveal, a betrayal, and a sudden limp. A quick-thinking apprentice pulls off one of his own shoes and tosses it on stage. It sort of works. The audience cheers. Or boos. Or both. There's tomato involved. You lose track. Behind the stage, a new actor is gearing up, this time for a nobleman role. He smooths down a frayed velvet tunic and adjusts a powdered wig that once starred in a production of The Tempest, Julius Caesar, and briefly, a puppet show. Its hairline now resembles that of a stressed hedgehog. You laugh under your breath. You weren't supposed to be here, remember? You just needed a job. But now you're chewing garlic, dodging flying cabbages, and hoping your next line doesn't get drowned out by the violinist sneezing into his sleeve. The curtain flaps open. You step back out, deliver a heartfelt monologue about the cruelty of fate and lost honor, while tiptoeing around a puddle that definitely wasn't there during rehearsal, and the crowd falls quiet. It's working. Somehow, against all odds, this haphazard assembly of garlicky, slightly damp, under-rehearsed humans is pulling off something that almost resembles art. And that's the magic of it. You're not here for perfection. You're here for the shared gasps, the unexpected laughter, the moment when a line lands just right and the world hushes for a heartbeat. A bell rings. The scene changes. You drop your goblet, switch your sash, and become someone else entirely. You collapse onto the rickety bench backstage, panting like you've just run a foot race, which honestly, between dodging props, delivering soliloquies, and hauling costume changes, it feels like you have. The wig you wore as a melancholy prince is now mashed flat on your head, and someone else's face powder has transferred entirely to your left cheek. No one says a word. The backstage code is sacred. If it didn't catch fire or fall into the audience, it's fine. Someone's boiling water in a dented tin pot for tea. Or possibly broth. No one's sure anymore. The important part is it's warm, and you can wrap your fingers around the tin cup to soothe your constantly ink-stained hands. You look over and see two of your castmates swapping tights. They do this with the casualness of roommates trading socks, which, in a way, you are. Privacy isn't a thing when you're all living in a room above a fishmonger's shop, separated only by one threadbare curtain and a mutual agreement not to look directly at each other before breakfast. You tug off the wig, shake out your hair, and wince. It smells like lanolin and vinegar. Someone tried to freshen it with a mixture that may or may not have contained pickled onions. Still, it's better than the one you wore last week. That one had lice. You remember the night someone set a wig on fire trying to kill a flea? Bold move. You glance around the dressing area, if you can call a broom closet with a cracked mirror and a pile of cloaks a dressing area. The wardrobe is a chaotic jumble of hose, jerkin, petticoats, and the occasional codpiece that seems to move of its own volition. The garments are patched, sweat-stained, and frequently borrowed from actual noble households. At least, they were noble garments, a few decades and moths ago. There's a wig hanging from a nail on the wall, just swaying slightly with the draft. It's curly, red, and looks like it might bite you if you try to wear it without asking. That wig has done Othello, Henry IV, and once appeared as a lion in a school nativity scene. It smells like garlic, too. You laugh quietly. Elizabethan actors, yourself very much included, used to rub garlic onto wigs before performances. Some said it warded off illness. Others claimed it helped with inspiration. More likely it masked the smell of everything else: the sweat, the animal fat used for makeup, the fish from nearby stalls, and the sweet stench of spilled ale soaked into every board of the stage. It was all part of the ritual. And here's your quirky tidbit of the evening: wigs weren't just shared among actors. They were sometimes rented out by barbers and apothecaries. You might show up to rehearsal and find your wig being used as a display model on someone's shop window. Free with every tooth extraction. You sip your dubious tea and watch as the makeup apprentice, a boy with more ambition than common sense, tries to touch up someone's stage bruises using soot and goose fat. It's going about as well as you'd expect. There's now a fight over whether the soot makes someone look mysterious or just like they fell down a chimney. You start changing for your next role, a disheveled noble with an unfortunate secret and dramatic hair. The doublet you throw on smells faintly of apples. Someone must have stored it in a cider barrel again. The shoes? Still damp from yesterday's rainstorm. You slip them on anyway. Then comes the garlic necklace. It's more of a cluster than a necklace, really. Braided garlic bulbs looped with old twine. Some actors wear them for luck. Others to keep people from borrowing their cloaks. You've never figured out whether it works, but no one's ever stolen your cloak while you had the garlic on. Correlation, causation, who knows? Historians still argue whether garlic use on Elizabethan stages was driven by theatrical superstition, plague anxiety, or just a shared belief that if everyone smells equally terrible, no one can complain. Either way, it became a sort of backstage talisman. Wigs and garlic, the sacred combo. A whistle blows, and you hear the stage manager, a man with one eye and the world's most dramatic sigh, mutter that you're on in 2 minutes. You press your garlic-slicked wig back onto your head, straighten the moth-bitten lace at your collar, and prepare to become someone new again. Backstage quiets. The moment before re-entry is always weirdly reverent. For all the chaos, sweat, and shoe-swapping, there's a hush right before the curtain lifts. It's the same hush you get before a storm, or before a confession, or before someone's about to laugh and hasn't realized it yet. You step out. Instantly, you're swallowed by torchlight and voices. The air's warmer now, thicker with the smell of boiled onions from the vendor outside. You make eye contact with the audience, or at least you think you do. It's hard to tell when half the faces are shadowed, and the other half are wearing pork pie hats at dramatic angles. Your lines come easily this time. You sweep across the stage, declaring betrayal, regret, longing. One woman in the front row gasps. Someone else drops a pie. Success. The scene ends with a flourish and a collective bow. You slip off stage and high-five the kid who just played your illegitimate son. He's 11. He thinks he's taller than you now. You both laugh. Behind you, the red wig is already being handed off to another actor. This time it'll be worn as part of a pirate costume in the next comedy sketch. The garlic? That stays with you. You've grown weirdly attached to it. And as you lean against the back wall, listening to the crowd laugh, cheer, heckle, and hiccup their way through the next scene, you wonder, just for a second, how history will remember this. The wigs, the garlic, the ridiculous costumes and recycled plots. Maybe they won't. Maybe all that will remain are some notes in a ledger, a smudged sketch of a stage, a passing reference to one actor who smelled strongly of stew. But you'll remember. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. You're curled on a ratty cushion in the corner now, still wearing half of your costume, with the garlic cluster perched like a crown. Around you, actors drift in and out of the light like sleepwalkers, some removing makeup with a smear of bacon fat and flour, others humming snatches of songs that may or may not belong to the play they were just in. Tonight's performance is over, but the real theater, the behind-the-scenes spectacle, has only just begun. You already know how this goes. Someone's going to bring out the cheap wine. Someone's going to start reenacting a sword fight with a broom handle. And someone's going to loudly claim they could have been Shakespeare, if only they'd been born 20 years earlier and with slightly better handwriting. There's a wooden chest propped open in the middle of the floor. You approach it like it might bite, because frankly, you're not sure what's in there anymore. It's the communal props and accessories chest, and it smells like damp wood and regret. But inside? That's where you find the wigs. Rows of them, resting on cloth bundles, some carefully wrapped in silk, others stuffed into old bread sacks. You pick one up. This one's gray with curled ends, clearly meant for some elder character. It smells faintly of clove and pipe smoke. There's a small, faded tag attached to it that reads, "Murdered Uncle, do not use for lovers." The labeling system is casual. You run your fingers through the strands, noticing how coarsely it's been woven. Probably horsehair. That was common back then. Human hair was expensive, and also, well, full of surprises. Horsehair held its shape longer, especially once you curled it with a hot iron, which was literally heated over a flame and had a solid 40% chance of singeing your costume. Your fingers still bear the scars. Some of the fancier wigs had a bit of lace at the edges, attempting to blend into a wearer's hairline. But it never really worked. Even the wealthiest patrons knew full well that half the cast looked like overturned mop heads. But you know what? The audience loved it. Or at least they tolerated it while munching on hazelnuts and throwing orange peels into the pit. One of the apprentices joins you, dragging out a pale blonde wig with suspicious reddish stains. "Lady Macbeth," he says proudly, as if he's about to announce his engagement. You nod solemnly. That wig has been stabbed, kissed, cried on, and once, horrifyingly, used to blot a nosebleed. You set it down and lift another. This one's strikingly clean. A rarity. Turns out, it was recently boiled in mint water and then hung to dry in someone's chicken coop. That's the kind of cross-purposing you get when you live in communal quarters with 5 actors, 2 goats, and a former nun who now plays background wenches. She's surprisingly good at slapstick. And yes, before you ask, goats do eat wigs. You learn that the hard way. Historians still argue whether these backstage customs were formalized or simply the product of sheer chaos. There were no real costume designers in your world, just whoever had the steadiest hand and a talent for scrounging. You once watched someone craft a crown out of pewter spoons and lace doilies. Looked great from 10 feet away. Gave you a headache up close. The thing is, everyone shared everything. Not out of generosity, mind you, but necessity. Wigs were expensive, fragile, and custom fit for heads that weren't always available. So you wore someone else's hair, and next week they'd wear yours. The result was a constant circulation of identity. Today you're a duke, tomorrow a fool, and the next day a suspicious-looking nun who solves crimes. Garlic, meanwhile, clung to wigs like superstition clings to a sailor. It wasn't just for the smell or the taste. People genuinely believed it could fend off the plague. It was hung over doors, worn in shoes, and yes, rubbed into wigs, especially before a packed house. The plague. That silent, terrifying partner in every performance. When outbreaks swept through London, theaters shut down faster than you could say. doublet. But when they reopened, actors returned with even more rituals, more garlic, more prayers, more muttered charms whispered into the backstage gloom. One guy swore by rubbing his script with lavender oil and pigeon droppings. Nobody argued. He never got sick. Coincidence? You pull another wig from the chest, this one long, black, and a bit dramatic. It's tangled like seaweed. You remember wearing it during a disastrous King Lear where someone forgot to secure the set wall, and the whole backdrop fell mid-mad scene. The crowd thought it was intentional. You took a bow like a hero. That's theater. Someone's just found an old bottle of mead, and the room tilts toward cheer. Laughter echoes against the warped plaster walls. Someone plays a lute that has precisely 3 working strings, and you join in humming. You're still wearing your garlic, and someone jokes that you're starting to smell like a theater. You take it as a compliment. And somewhere between the sip of mead and the unraveling of another wig, you realize the magic isn't in the performances, it's in this. The backstage tangle of wigs and cloaks and dreams stitched together with garlic and sweat. The living, breathing, giggling heart of theater. It's messy, sure. But it's yours. You're sprawled under a half-collapsed dressing screen now, feet sticking out like an unfortunate prop casualty. But you're not alone. Next to you, someone's snoring gently, still wearing a tunic emblazoned with a faded lion that's seen better centuries. It smells of stage dust, dried rosemary, and the lingering musk of candle smoke, because no matter how much garlic you rub on yourself, nothing ever fully drowns out the scent of beeswax and over-rehearsed monologues. You adjust your position and hear a soft clink. Ah yes, the garlicky pouch tucked into your boot just brushed against the tin goblet. You still remember the first time someone shoved that garlic pouch into your hands and told you, with dead seriousness, "It's for health. And also for rats." You nodded as if this was a perfectly rational statement. You didn't want to be the one to question centuries of aromatic tradition. You see, garlic wasn't just an Elizabethan actor's cologne of choice. It was currency, cure, and, depending on your appetite, a snack. If wigs were shared for thrift, garlic was shared for survival. Carried in pouches, rubbed on throats, and sometimes chewed before a dramatic death scene, not for performance reasons, but to ensure the actor playing opposite would keep their distance. There's a ledger of sorts propped on a nail by the window. It lists the name of every actor in the troupe and, inexplicably, how many cloves of garlic they're owed. It reads like a medieval honor roll. Thomas, 2 cloves, 1 partial. Eleanor, 0 cloves, bartered for tights. Geoffrey, 5 cloves, hoarding again. You squint at your own name. Just a dash. You never keep garlic long enough for tallying. Now, don't get the wrong idea. No one actually likes smelling like a pickled stew. But the alternatives, disease, rats, bad luck, seemed worse. There was even a rumor that wearing garlic made your voice carry farther in open-air theaters. Whether it was projection or pure hallucination is still up for debate. Historians still argue whether Elizabethan actors believed in the garlic's vocal powers or simply found it an effective people repellent. You remember one actor, Reginald, who swore by a secret blend of garlic, onion, and crushed mugwort. Wore it as a paste on his chest during performances. People avoided him so completely he could rehearse alone in peace. That you had to admire. Another time, someone tried to stage a romantic balcony scene. All was going smoothly until Juliet leaned down and whispered her undying love, only to recoil at what she later described as a roast dinner's ghost. The scene was not salvaged. The audience gave it a standing ovation, thinking it was a farce. Honestly? Not wrong. You pluck a bulb of garlic from the makeshift, medicinals shelf, really just a slanted plank near the window, and peel it slowly, listening to the skin crackle. There's something oddly satisfying about it. Beneath the brittle surface is something so soft, so pungently powerful, it could double as a stage weapon. And probably has. People outside the acting world sometimes mock the garlic habit. Called you all superstitious. Said a good soap and a bath would be just as effective. Which is adorable, really, considering baths were reserved for the dying or the extremely wealthy, and soap was often made of ashes and animal fat. You preferred your chances with garlic. Some nights, when you'd lie down to sleep after a show, garlic still clinging to your palms, you'd wonder if anyone in the future would understand this part, the grimy, garlicky, endlessly shared reality of actors before lights, before microphones, before dressing rooms with mirrors that didn't double as rat dens. A lot of people romanticize your time. The golden age of theater, they call it. But you've seen the cracked wigs, the half-eaten costumes, yes, mishaps fabric, and the actors who rehearse soliloquies in their sleep, only to wake up mid-line and keep going. The truth isn't glamorous, but it is glorious, in its own smelly, stubborn way. The garlic became more than a health measure. It became part of the troupe's identity. You all stunk together, and so you all belonged together. When someone brought in a new clove from a faraway market, braided with string and blessed by a toothless herbalist, you passed it around like treasure. People wept. Literally. From the fumes. And then there's the cooking. Oh yes, sometimes garlic crossed over into your one-pot stews, those bubbling mystery meals that simmered on the edge of the stage house hearth. If you were lucky, there was meat. If not, well, garlic helped disguise whatever else was in there. Roots, wild onions, the occasional mushroom of dubious origin. There's a running joke in your troupe that garlic is the true lead actor. It's in every scene, every breath, every wardrobe change. It lingers after applause. It's carried off stage by your fellow players, who cough dramatically and fan themselves with their scripts. And yes, every so often, someone insists that garlic enhances the dramatic arts. That it grounds you. That wearing it ties you to a primal performance instinct that dates back to ancient Greece. There's even an argument floating around that Sophocles himself kept garlic tucked in his sandals. Scholars remain divided. But even if that's just another myth passed around after the third cup of wine, there's no denying this. In your little world of hand-me-down wigs, recycled scripts, and curtains stitched from funeral shrouds, garlic is one of the few constants. And as you nestle deeper beneath the dressing screen, the clove in your hand warming slightly against your palm, you realize something curious. Despite everything, the mess, the odor, the sheer inconvenience, you feel safe. As if this smelly little bulb really could keep the plague, the critics, and the ghosts of forgotten monologues at bay. Maybe superstition has a scent after all. Your eyes blink open to the dim flicker of a dying rushlight, and for a fleeting moment you forget where you are. The musty scent of grease paint, sweat-drenched doublets, and yesterday's garlic stew brings you back quickly. You're still in the green room, or what passes for it, wedged between a broken harp and a crate of apples so bruised they look philosophical. Across the room, a long wig dangles off the edge of a stool, its curls stiff with years of powdered chalk and sorrow. You'd recognize that wig anywhere. It's the wig. The veteran. Passed down from actor to actor like a cursed family heirloom. Worn in comedies, tragedies, history plays, and one unfortunate adaptation of a Greek myth where it briefly caught fire mid-curse. Even then, it carried on. In the Elizabethan theater world, wigs weren't just a costume piece. They were precious, painstakingly crafted from real hair, often human, sometimes horse, and in rare cases, goat. And because they were so costly, your troupe only had a few to share between dozens of roles. The result? A chaotic ballet of head-swapping during performances. You once witnessed Ophelia and Queen Elizabeth pass the same auburn ringlet masterpiece within the space of a single act, like some oddly hair-based Olympic relay. Each wig had a name, of course. Sir Scratch-a-Lot, Dusty Mary, the blonde that shouldn't be, and your personal favorite, the Spectre, named for its uncanny ability to move when no one touched it. You tell yourself it's just a draft. You hope. This sharing wasn't just limited to wigs. Mustaches, beards, hats, even padded bellies, all stored in a series of creaky trunks labeled in chalk: regal, peasant, merchant who dies immediately. Every piece, every follicle, every scratchy chin strap had a legacy. A tale whispered during load-in or slurred over communal ale. You recall the first time you were entrusted with a wig. It was for a matinee of Henry IV, and you were to play Hotspur, who, ironically, had the least spirited hair of the lot. The wig you were handed was somewhere between shorn sheep and barn broom. Still, you wore it with pride. You could almost hear the previous actor's ghost whispering encouragement, or indigestion. It was hard to tell. You had exactly 23 seconds to change costumes and pass that wig on to the next performer, who would sprint on stage, breathless, portraying a completely different character, now with an identical head of hair. It's theatrical illusion by necessity. One moment you're a nobleman. The next, a scullery maid with suspiciously masculine sideburns. The audience didn't seem to mind. They were too distracted by the rats fighting in the rafters. What they never knew was how intimate it all was. The way you tie on a wig still damp with someone else's sweat. The gentle cursing when the lace refused to lie flat. The triumphant yell when someone finally figured out how to secure Dusty Mary, without pins flying into the audience like tiny scalped javelins. But the true rite of passage? Wig maintenance. Once a week, the entire troupe would gather around with brushes, vinegar water, and the solemn mood of a religious observance. Each wig would be placed on its worn wooden head mount, inspected, deloused, if needed, and reshaped into something vaguely dramatic. There's a reason your costume smelled like a blend of rosemary, garlic, and vinegar. It wasn't fashion, it was survival. Lice were the uncredited co-stars of every Elizabethan production. No matter how dramatic your monologue, the audience would notice if something crawled out of your fringe mid-scene. Still, you remember the laughter. The camaraderie. How actors would jostle and joke while brushing each other's wigs, tossing clumps of errant curls into the fire like offerings to some chaotic theater god. Someone would inevitably recite lines from Macbeth, which you weren't supposed to say in the theater, but no one stopped them. Superstition loses to boredom every time. Historians still argue whether these sharing practices were out of pure frugality or forged a deeper sense of ensemble unity. You think it's both. When you've worn someone else's scalp 4 nights a week and shared a garlic clove with them on Thursdays, you start to trust them with your life, or at least your exits and entrances. And oh, the fringe tidbits. Like the rumor that one wig in the costume chest was made from the hair of an actual beheaded noblewoman. Ridiculous, of course. But the wig did have a faint perfume and an unsettling tendency to tangle itself into knots that spelled out ominous messages. Probably just coincidence. Probably. Then there was the blonde that shouldn't be. So named because no one in the troupe could remember ever dyeing it, buying it, or wearing it, and yet it kept appearing in different trunks, despite being burned for kindling 3 times. One actor swore it whispered in Latin. But he also drank stage blood recreationally, so, grain of salt. You gently pat the wig beside you now, fingers brushing the frizzed curls with something like tenderness. It's absurd, really. This tangle of threadbare lace and faded horsehair has been a queen, a fool, a villain, and once, a dragon. It's older than some of the scripts in rotation. You wouldn't trade it for anything. Because in this world, your world, these shared, stained, strange little objects become more than props. They become companions. Anchors. Soft, scratchy relics of nights when the audience laughed a beat too early or cried in all the wrong places. Nights when your shoes stuck to the floor from spilled ale and you still found the courage to deliver your lines with gusto. Maybe it's not the wigs themselves. Maybe it's the memories stitched into them. The whispers, the laughter, the muffled panic when someone realizes they're wearing the wrong one. You lie back, wig nestled beside you like a furry little sentinel, and let yourself drift. Outside you can hear the muffled stomp of boots on cobblestones. The city never sleeps, but you can. Just as long as you're not using the specter as a pillow. That one bites. There's a peculiar sort of silence backstage after the final bow. Not the hush of reverence or peace, but the sticky, exhausted quiet of a dozen people all collectively exhaling, itching under their doublets, and trying to figure out which part of their costume smells like moldy cheese. You're half draped over a stool, peeling off your overtunic like a tired onion, when someone hands you a clove of garlic. No explanation. No context. Just a clove. You nod solemnly and tuck it behind your ear, because this is theater, And in Elizabethan times, garlic isn't just garlic, it's life insurance. You learned this early on, probably during your second week in the troupe, right after your first case of the stage rash, and just before your surprise understudy debut as a dying sailor. Garlic, they said, keeps you breathing, keeps the plague away, keeps the ghosts off your dressing stool. And frankly, in this century, you'll take what you can get. The garlic thing isn't just an actor's superstition, though, it's everywhere. Street vendors munch it raw between haggling sessions. Apothecaries crush it into pastes with ominous names like Life Balm and Demon Snare. Wealthier folks wear it in little velvet pouches sewn into their bodices. It's like medieval Febreze, but way more judgmental. In the theater, garlic is both defense and deodorant. Performers smear it under their arms before a sweaty sword fight scene or chew on a clove before delivering a monologue to fend off bad breath. Or worse, bad spirits. You've seen more than one actor wave a garlic bulb over the stage before a performance, muttering half-remembered Latin phrases and making the sign of the cross, just in case. Especially when doing Macbeth. Again. Really, you'd think we'd all learn. Historians still argue whether this garlicky obsession was primarily medical or magical. It did have antimicrobial properties, but it also had a place in every good curse-repelling poultice, alongside rosemary, vinegar, and, on rare occasions, ferret tail. One chronicler even swore that actors who forgot their garlic offerings were the ones who lost their voices mid-performance, or got heckled by what sounded like disembodied voices from the lighting gallery. Of course, that lighting gallery was actually a rickety scaffold with a man holding a mirror and a candle, but still, no one likes to be hissed at by a ghost. You recall an old actor named Lawrence who carried garlic in his pockets, stuffed into his hatband, and once even sewed cloves into his shoes. He claimed he hadn't caught the pox in 15 years, which might have had more to do with his refusal to bathe than the garlic. Still, the man never missed a performance. And oh, the dressing rooms. If you could call them that. More like storage closets with aspirations. The pungent aroma of aging wigs, wet wool, and the ever-present garlic mist would hit you like a blunt sonnet the moment you opened the door. You'd hang your costume beside 10 others, all still radiating heat and drama from the earlier show, and hope yours dried out before the next day. Meanwhile, someone would be chanting softly over a pot of garlic-infused vinegar boiling in the corner. Just to clear the air. There's an old story that floats around the troupe, probably apocryphal, but still deeply loved, about a performance of The Jew of Malta where one actor ate so much garlic beforehand, his scene partner fainted mid-line. Instead of stopping the show, they simply dragged him off stage and replaced him with the nearest apprentice in a mustache glued on with honey. The show must go on. Even if everyone on stage smells like an alchemist's kitchen. Of course, not everyone loved garlic. Sometimes audience members would protest, particularly if seated too close to the stage. It offends the senses, one noblewoman once said before being handed a clove and told, "So does your perfume, my lady." The actor in question was fined, and then immediately promoted to a lead role. Coincidence? Even among performers, there were garlic politics. Some swore by raw, others roasted. Some claimed chewing it while reciting lines helped with projection. Others said it was best smeared under the armpits and behind the knees. One actor insisted on sticking 2 cloves in his shoes, not for luck, but because they squeak less when oiled. You look down at your own boots, scuffed and flaking. You wonder if that trick still works. Probably not with modern soles. Then again, you're not supposed to be modern right now, are you? You're here, in the dirt and chaos of a world where superstition and sweat are equal players. And the garlic isn't going anywhere. In the rare, blessed moments between shows, when the costuming chaos ebbs and the smell of garlic gives way to whatever's cooking in the nearby and stew, probably, always stew, you find a sort of peace. You sit with the others in a half-circle around the embers of an extinguished lantern, someone softly strumming a lute missing 2 strings, the others passing around a half-loaf of bread and a clove to chew for. Clarity. There's laughter, of course. Always. One actor claims garlic makes him dream in iambic pentameter. Another says it gives him visions of past performances, none of which he remembers actually being in. One thing's certain, no matter the logic, garlic keeps showing up. In pouches. In pockets. In piles near the edge of the stage. A clove in your bodice, a bulb in your travel sack. And when a performance ends, there it is again, handed to you like a talisman, a badge of survival. And tonight, as you wrap yourself in your cloak and lie back on the creaky wooden floor, someone gently places one near your head. For dreams. For ghosts. For health. Maybe all three. You don't question it. Not anymore. Your sleep is shallow, predictably, and tinged with the kind of dreams only garlic-laced air and overly tight breeches can summon. When dawn creeps in, slippery and pale through the cracks in the shutters, you stretch, groaning like a floorboard, and start the routine all over again. First comes finding your wig. It's not where you left it, which is completely expected. Nothing ever stays where it's supposed to in an Elizabethan theater, least of all the wigs. Yours was a number 6. A slightly mangy piece meant to approximate the tousled curls of a romantic hero, if said hero had recently lost a duel to a hay bale. You check the usual spots. On the bust of Julius Caesar in the prop corner? Nope. Hanging from a lantern hook? Not today. Being worn backward by a drunken stagehand as a beard? Bingo. You sigh and retrieve it, brushing off crumbs. Was that cheese? And unrolling a note pinned to the underside. Borrowed for Lady Macbeth. Returned with thanks and lice. Theater humor. You rake it through with your fingers, murmuring the standard prayer to Saint Genesius, patron saint of actors and possibly, if rumors are true, victims of tragic wig swaps. Wigs, you see, are more than costume here, they're shared lifelines. They determine who you are from one scene to the next, from nobleman to commoner, from scheming villain to toothless fool. And because money is tighter than a corset in July, these wigs get reused. Constantly. Today you're playing Valentine in Two Gentlemen of Verona, which calls for modest chestnut curls and a bit of cheek. Yesterday, the same wig played a mad old widow with gout. Tomorrow it might become a pirate. You try not to think too hard about it. Historians still argue whether the practice of sharing wigs among actors was born purely of necessity or if it also fed into a kind of superstitious recycling, absorbing the performance energy of previous roles. Kind of like a dramatic Horcrux, but with more dandruff. Either way, the sharing system comes with rules. First, never wear a wig straight from someone else's head without at least airing it near a candle or brushing it with rosemary water. Second, always return it to its labeled hook, unless you're using it to barter for extra wine. And third, if a wig feels cursed, don't question it, just burn some sage and toss it onto the nearest dummy head until it chills out. You've definitely known a few haunted wigs. One in particular, a wiry blonde thing used for Shakespeare's heroines, had a habit of slipping off mid-scene, always at the worst possible moment. Once during Juliet's death monologue. Once while Desdemona pretended to suffocate. Once during an off-brand comedy called The Misbehaving Milkmaid, which, in fairness, was improved by the unexpected hair drop. Even offstage, wigs run the show. They're traded like gold among actors. You remember watching two apprentices nearly come to blows over a new auburn number imported from France. Horsehair and silk, practically regal. One of them wept when it was claimed by a lead. The other just stole it during intermission. To keep track of all this follicular drama, the company scribe started keeping a wig ledger. No joke. A handwritten logbook that documented every piece, color, condition, last wearer, and whether it had been infested with anything recently. It sat beside the costume inventory, which itself was about as accurate as a soggy compass. Your own entries in the book read like a tragic poem. Valentine's curls, slightly scorched at temples. Hamlet's fringe, stained with stage blood, still wearable. Henry VIII's beard, missing, presumed stolen. Some actors become possessive, despite the rules. They tuck their favorites under floorboards or lock them in unlabeled boxes, only to forget the hiding place during the next touring season. Entire troupes have been known to spend evenings crawling on hands and knees, knocking on planks like amateur carpenters in pursuit of a missing pompadour. But not you. You learn the hard way that attachment only leads to heartbreak. Like that one wig you loved, deep brown ringlets, impossibly soft, always sat just right on your head. Gone one morning? No trace. Replaced with a wiry black mop that smelled suspiciously like pickled fish. You never recovered emotionally. Then there's the garlic again. Always garlic. You smear some under your wig line. Standard precaution. A little goes a long way in the war against lice, colds, and ghosts. As the sun continues its reluctant crawl above the thatched rooftops, the theater comes alive in its usual, chaotic rhythm. You cross paths with the costume mistress, who's threatening to sew someone's breeches shut if they keep tearing them during pratfalls. You nod to the boy playing Ophelia this week, who's currently brushing mascara onto his borrowed lashes with the end of a turkey feather. Wigs, costumes, garlic, it's all part of the strange machinery of Elizabethan acting, held together by sweat, spit, and just enough belief in the mystical to keep things interesting. Later, as the show begins and you step out into the limelight, actual limelight being a few torches and reflective surfaces, you feel the familiar weight of your shared wig settle onto your scalp like an old, itchy friend. You inhale the faint scent of rosemary, ashes, and something else. Cheddar? Maybe best not to ask. You project your lines. You stride and posture and woo and weep. The wig holds. The garlic stings a bit, but hey, your sinuses are clearer than ever. You forget, for a moment, the itch and the heat and the history stitched into every thread and fiber. You simply are Valentine, chestnut curls and all. And when you exit stage left, sweating and triumphant, someone's already waiting to pluck the wig from your head and slap it onto theirs for the next act. Theater doesn't pause. Hair waits for no one. You're back in the cramped dressing alcove again, arms raised, shirt half off, when a shout goes up from the next room. Someone's lost the garlic. Not all the garlic, just the performance cloves. You roll your eyes and toss your shirt onto a nail protruding from the wall, narrowly missing an already half-crushed rat trap. Yes, garlic. Again. It's the backstage equivalent of gold dust, with a smell you will never forget and cannot seem to get out of your doublet. Garlic is smeared, stuffed, chewed, and even hung from strings backstage like little bulbous charms. Your theater doesn't run on money or grace, it runs on cloves. Today, the garlic is for you and your co-star. You're playing a pair of rascally brothers in a farce, and one of the jokes hinges on a prolonged scene of shared breath, fake sneezing, and dramatic feints. Garlic breath, your director insists, adds realism. You don't question it anymore. You chew. Historians still argue whether garlic was truly used as a stage prop for comedy or merely a health tool that became tradition. Regardless, Elizabethan actors swore by it. Sore throat? Garlic. Bad luck? Garlic. Hexed wig? More garlic. You suspect half the roles written for villagers were just excuses for the garlic chewers to stand close to the audience and clear a bit of space with every exhale. One fringe theory suggests garlic was part of an unspoken actor hierarchy. The more garlicky your breath, the more time you spent in the spotlight. A nasal dominance game, if you will. You try not to laugh when a rival actor once dabbed garlic oil behind his ears before a monologue. It didn't help his performance, but it did kill a few mosquitoes. The garlic also serves a practical purpose, a repellent for vermin, both literal and metaphorical. Fleas hated it. So did dishonest creditors and drunk hecklers. A strong enough clove necklace, looped a few times around your neck, could almost guarantee a scuttle-free night. That said, it's not just about smell or symbolism. There's a kind of sacred ritual to it. Before curtain call, you gather with your fellow players and pass around a pouch, a stitched leather thing filled with crushed cloves and dried herbs. You all take a breath. Some whisper lines. Some kiss it like a relic. One guy just sneezes on it and mutters something in Latin. Honestly, he might be onto something. You remember your first performance under garlic influence. You were nervous, sweating, and convinced your breath could knock out a horse. But then you stepped on stage and delivered your lines without stammer or pause, It worked. The garlic had absorbed your jitters and replaced them with boldness, and also some deeply unfortunate burps. You chew now before the matinee. The flavor punches your molars with the subtlety of a freight cart. It burns going down. Your fellow actor does the same. Then you lock eyes and nod. You're ready. The play unfolds, and the garlic does its job. Your voice projects with unusual sharpness. The audience leans in, recoils, and then laughs. One woman even drops her handkerchief and fans herself. You suspect the garlic may have helped you hit a more authentic tone of scoundrel, especially during the bit where you feign food poisoning. Later, backstage, you collapse onto a pile of costumes that smells vaguely of vinegar and despair. Someone's already boiling clothes and wine for the evening show. Another actor is using a garlic press to fill tiny linen sachets, gifts for the orchestra, who requested anything to mask the pit smell. The costume mistress walks by with a tray of garlic-stuffed pastries and announces that they're medicinal. You bite one. It tastes like a health potion from an unlicensed apothecary, but you feel better almost instantly. Could be the placebo effect, could be raw panic. You never really know in this job. Of course, it's not all savory miracles. You've had garlic-related mishaps, too. Once, someone mistook garlic oil for wig glue. The resulting olfactory explosion caused a small fire and ruined an entire production of The Taming of the Shrew. Another time, a garlic bulb rolled into the pit and disrupted a lute solo. The musician blamed you personally for a week. Then there was the great garlic shortage of last winter. A freak storm ruined most of the imported stock. You and the others had to ration cloves, half for performance, half for stew. It brought out the worst in everyone. Actors hoarded bulbs in their sleeves. The company manager tried to grow some in a windowsill box. And someone, no names, began watering it with white wine. The plant died. So did morale. Even now you keep an emergency stash. Tucked in your boot is a single dried clove, brittle and ancient. You call it Old Crunchy. It's your talisman. You've never used it, but its presence is oddly comforting. You imagine archaeologists unearthing it centuries from now, puzzling over the theater rituals of the garlic cult. The sky darkens outside. You light a candle stub and press another clove into a tin bowl to roast for your sore throat. The scent wafts upward, sharp and earthy, tinged with something like nostalgia. You hum a tavern tune under your breath. Across the room, someone practices swordplay with a broom. Another actor gently oils his boots with a garlic-scented salve. At this point, you're not even sure if it does anything. It just feels right. Historians may squabble over the logic, the science, the origin of the garlic obsession, but to you, it's simple, it's tradition. The kind of tradition that turns a bunch of underpaid eccentrics into a family. Garlic binds you. Garlic steadies you. Garlic, in some odd way, makes you an actor. You pull on your next costume. Ruffled shirt, hose, ridiculous hat with one limp feather. Another comic role. Another round of breathy monologues and deeply nasal delivery. Another day of pretending, posing, projecting. You adjust your wig. Take a deep breath. Smell the garlic? Step into the wings. The wig slips again. You tug it down with one hand, but the elastic's been stretched by at least 3 previous heads. It's still damp, still warm, and still smells vaguely of someone else's soup. You remind yourself, this is the glamorous life of an Elizabethan actor. You know this wig well. It's the blonde scamp, used in comedies and light-hearted farces. Worn by both men and women, depending on who forgot their lines that week. Shared by at least 6 cast members, styled with grease, and occasionally, when times are tough, polished with lard. Not that you complain, okay, you do complain, but you've also worn worse. Remember the witch's bun, made from horsehair and beeswax? That thing could survive a siege. You slide into character as the stage manager signals. The wig holds, just barely. You stride into the glow of tallow candles, casting odd shadows on the rush-strewn floor. From behind you, a faint breeze carries the aroma of roasted garlic, candle smoke, and whatever it is that lives under the prop table. The audience is laughing already. Not at your lines, mind you. Someone in the balcony has dropped an entire meat pie onto the stage. Classic. As you speak your first line, you're aware of three things. Your co-star's wig is crooked, your own wig is starting to itch, and the guy in the front row has fallen asleep with his mouth open. Business as usual. Historians still argue whether actors shared wigs purely due to budget constraints, or whether there was a kind of fraternity to it, a shared crown of transformation, passed along like a theatrical torch. Either way, you know the pecking order by now. Lead roles get the least frizzy wigs. Minor characters get whatever's left, sometimes re-dyed with questionable berries. You once had a pink wig for a nobleman role. The dye didn't wash out for days. Your scalp smelled like mulberries and regret. Backstage after the act, you help your friend remove her wig. She winces as it pulls out a few strands of real hair. You think these ever get washed? She asks, half joking. You both laugh because you know the answer. They do not. Wigs get dusted with flour, dabbed with lavender water, combed with fingers or, on particularly fancy nights, the back end of a quill. But washed? No. That would ruin the character, or at least that's what the wardrobe mistress claims. She also believes cats are spies, so you take her opinions with a grain of salt and a garlic clove. One time, you caught the assistant costumer brushing out a wig with a fork. Not the wide-toothed kind. An actual dining fork. When you asked why, she said it was the only tool sharp enough to get through Mr. Plumbley's head grease. You nodded solemnly and never brought it up again. Another time, a lice outbreak swept through the cast. It took out half the company and led to 3 very creative replacements. The understudy for Juliet was a carpenter's apprentice with a convincing falsetto. The wigs were hung in the courtyard, doused in vinegar, and blessed by a passing monk. Did it work? Unclear. But the lice were never seen again, though one actor insists he still hears them plotting when the theater is quiet. You eye the wig rack now, dozens of wooden heads lined up like judgmental judges, each crowned with a sad, matted, overused peruke. There's one with feathers. One with beads. One with a suspicious red streak that nobody wants to talk about. You call that one Lady Tremblechin. Your next row requires modest curls, which turns out to be code for a scratchy mop that smells faintly of dried fish. You adjust the chin strap and try to ignore the way it pinches your ears. One time, an earring got tangled in a wig during a particularly dramatic feint. You nearly had to cut it off mid-performance. The earring, not your ear. As you wait in the wings, another actor leans over and whispers, "This one's cursed." You glance at her wig, which is indeed unnaturally stiff. "Cursed how?" you murmur. She shrugs. 3 nosebleeds and a broken prop sword since Monday. Naturally, you say, "Break a leg," and walk on stage like nothing's wrong. Later that night, after the show, there's a wig inspection. The assistant director is convinced someone tampered with the king's curls. He claims they were too bouncy for Act 2. The investigation is short. Turns out someone added extra horsehair for volume. It had the unintended effect of making the actor look like he'd been electrocuted mid-soliloquy. The company votes to keep the change. As the fire in the hearth crackles low, you and the others begin the end-of-night rituals. Wigs are hung. Garlic bundles are replaced. Socks are peeled off with grunts of exhaustion. Someone passes around stale ale. Another actor mimes Lady Tremblechin's final monologue using a sock puppet. You all laugh too hard, probably out of sheer fatigue. Historians rarely talk about these moments. The slapstick backstage chaos, the long silences between performances, the smell of old wigs and garlic bread mingling in the air. But this is the real theater. Not just the lines or the applause. It's the gluey wig wax. The whispered insults during quick changes. The panic search for the one, lucky, corset that hasn't been vomited on. Yet. And through it all, you wear the wigs. You adopt the voices. You press garlic cloves to your temples when the headaches come. You chase laughter and pathos in equal measure, even when your costume falls apart, and your wig slithers halfway down your face mid-duel. Tonight you sleep with a wig cap still on, forgot to take it off. It's tight, itchy, and smells like every performance you've done for the past year. But somehow, it feels like home. You wake with a faint line across your forehead, an imprint from the wig cap you forgot to remove. It's not the most uncomfortable thing you've slept in. Remember that one time you nodded off in a tree because you thought it was method acting, but it's close. Today's rehearsal is for the tragedy of Auric the Flushed, a lesser-known piece rumored to have been written by a drunk cousin of Marlowe. It has exactly 4 death scenes, 2 fake beards, and 1 incredibly aggressive garlic subplot. You stretch, pull on your hose, and try not to breathe too deeply near the costume pile. Someone's boots are fermenting again. At the theater, there's chaos, as usual. The witch's hair wig has gone missing. Again. You find it eventually, being used by a stray cat as a makeshift nest. You offer a tentative trade, half a meat pie for the return of the hairpiece. The cat thinks it over, then bolts, leaving a trail of crumbs and a single claw snagged in the lace front. The wig's salvageable. Barely. Today, you're helping with props too. A wooden sword with a detachable hilt, a fake goblet made from a goat bladder, don't ask, and a heaping basket of garlic. Real garlic. You breathe it in deeply. This is the good batch, fresh, earthy, pungent enough to clear your sinuses and your social life. Garlic in Elizabethan times isn't just a kitchen staple. It's a cultural force. People wear it, bathe with it, even stuff it in their boots. You've seen an actor tie cloves to their ankles to stop the demons rising from the floorboards. Can't say whether it works, but their shoes never smelled better. Historians still argue whether garlic in the theater was more for superstition or hygiene. Honestly, it's probably both. When you've got 30 actors sharing 5 costumes, garlic is both a fashion accessory and a personal defense mechanism. You once overheard an actor claim garlic made his voice rounder. He chewed a clove before every monologue. His breath could peel paint, but his vowels were spectacular. Mid-rehearsal, a fight breaks out over wig ownership. One actor insists the flowing locks of destiny belonged to him for his dramatic turn as Prince Orlan. Another actor says he wore it first, and besides, he combed it this morning, so finders keepers. The stage manager settles it by snatching the wig and announcing it's now the property of the narrator. You hold the tangled mass of curls in your hands like it's a newborn lamb. Warm. Slightly damp. Smelling faintly of time and panic. You slap it on and power through the next act. During a scene change, someone spills garlic oil onto a prop book. The director loves it. Says it gives the toma rustic, earthy aroma. It's repurposed as a wizard's spell book and gains legendary status among the crew. From then on, any prop that breaks gets an infusion of garlic oil, just in case. That's how the fake skull got its nickname. Stinky Yorick. You sit near the back door between scenes, letting the breeze cool your scalp. Your wig is itching again. A fellow actor hands you a clove, split neatly in 2. Rub this on your temple, she says. Old actor's trick. You hesitate. Will it help the headache? No, she says. But it'll keep Gerald from trying to kiss you again. There. You take the garlic and dab it near your hairline. A strange sensation follows, tingling, stinging, but also oddly calming. Maybe it's the ritual of it. Maybe it's the way garlic smells like something alive, something with its own stubborn spirit. You sit still for a while, lost in the soft creak of floorboards and the distant echo of lines being shouted far too passionately. Garlic plays a starring role in tonight's performance. Literally. There's a scene where a nobleman must fend off a cursed suitor using only a string of cloves. The timing is tricky, especially when the cloves keep flying off mid-flourish and hitting the audience. One night, a particularly juicy bulb landed in a duchess's lap. She took it as a sign and became the theater's biggest patron. You now refer to her as the garlic benefactor. Tonight, the scene goes smoothly. Mostly. Only one clove goes rogue, bouncing into the pit orchestra's drummer, who incorporates it into his rhythm with impressive flair. As the night winds down, you return your wig to the rack. There's something deeply weird about watching a dozen heads silently waiting for morning. Some are cocked to one side, frozen mid-dramatic pause. Others look like they're judging your life choices. You pat your wig gently, thank it for not falling off mid-bow, and hang it beside Lady Tremblechin. You wipe down your face with a rag soaked in rosewater and vinegar, part cleansing, part ritual, part desperate attempt to smell like anything other than roasted cloves. Outside, the street is quiet. The garlic stalls are closed, the air thick with wood smoke and echoes of applause. As you walk home, the moon hangs low and buttery in the sky. You pass a street preacher declaring that wigs are the devil's coiffure. You wave. He blesses you anyway. At your door, you find a single clove of garlic tied with twine. You look around. No one. Just the wind nudging a shutter, and a faint giggle from somewhere on the roof. Probably Gerald. You wake up before sunrise, not out of discipline but because your neighbor's rooster believes in punctual agony. You fumble for your shirt, notice it's crusted in dried paint from last night's scene-change chaos, and settle on an older, equally unwashed option that smells faintly of candle wax and, possibly, eel. Theater laundry isn't so much a chore as a negotiation with fate. Your wig is waiting, perched atop a dented tankard to keep its volume. The trick to good wig storage, someone once told you, is treating it like a noble guest, upright, out of the sun, and never near a chamber pot. You carefully comb through it, untying the knots and pulling out what appears to be a twig, one lace cuff button, and something suspiciously like pigeon fluff. Downstairs, breakfast is garlic soup. Again. For strength. Your landlady insists. You once saw her crush a pewter candlestick with her bare hands, so you just nod and sit. The broth burns all the way down, and you feel oddly invincible. At the theater, a new notice is posted, Queen's Court expected in 3 weeks. Panic ensues. Everyone's pretending to be calm, but they're brushing their wigs and ironing ruffles like their lives depend on it. Because they sort of do. Queen Elizabeth loves drama, especially comedies where someone falls downstairs. Unfortunately, your troupe's only stare gag involves someone accidentally stepping into a chamber pot. Not elegant. Still, the script is being rewritten at a frantic pace. You're now playing a nobleman with a tragic limp and a garlic allergy. You try not to take it personally. Costume fitting follows. You share a dressing screen with 4 other actors and exactly 1 surviving jar of face powder. It smells like lavender and old socks. You puff it on anyway. Someone's corset is laced too tight, and they faint into the arms of a passing jester. He keeps juggling. The show must go on. Garlic is the uncredited co-star of every production. Actors chew it to clear the throat, rub it on the soles of their feet to ground themselves, and sometimes tuck cloves into their wigs to prevent brain fog. One actor swears it helped him remember all his lines during King Lear. Historians still argue whether the memory-enhancing claims of garlic have any merit, but on stage, placebo is 9/10 of performance. The real trouble starts when someone tries to disguise garlic cloves as grapes in a romantic picnic scene. You know it's going to end badly, but you say nothing. It's funnier that way. During the run-through, the lead actress bites into a clove mid-passionate speech, pauses, tears streaming, then continues as if nothing happened. That's professionalism. Or trauma. During lunch, you sit outside with your boots off, letting the sun warm your wigless scalp. Someone's playing the lute nearby, badly, but with feeling. You close your eyes. You could be in the Italian countryside. Or maybe just beside a fishmonger's stall. It's all about attitude. You're joined by an old actor, once famed for his sword fights and now mostly relegated to ghost roles and crowd scenes. He tells you about the Great Garlic Panic of '89, when the backstage garlic storage turned rancid during a summer heat wave. They blamed the smell on a rival theater. It worked. A week later, the rival troupe's patrons started wearing nose cloths embroidered with insults. Theater beef is timeless. Afternoon rehearsal drags on. The garlic allergy subplot requires you to sneeze convincingly 5 times in a row while still delivering lines. You practice your fake sneezes until someone mistakes you for being genuinely ill and throws a blanket over your head. You finish the scene muffled but determined. Your co-actor develops an unfortunate wig slippage problem. Halfway through a dramatic monologue, her wig slides forward and covers one eye like a sultry pirate. She keeps going undeterred. You applaud quietly. She curtsies mid-line. The director yells. You all pretend not to hear him. The new costumes arrive. Yours smells like it's already done 3 performances without you. The ruffles are uneven, and there's a suspiciously garlic-shaped stain on the sleeve. Still, it fits. That's more than most can say. As night falls, you prep your wig like it's opening night at the Globe. You pat it, powder it, whisper a little prayer. Stay on, you say, and I'll buy you a new ribbon. Your wig does not respond, but it looks confident. Backstage, someone's boiling cloves in a tin kettle, trying to infuse the dressing room with clarity. It mostly just makes your eyes water. A rat scurries by wearing what appears to be a button from your cloak. You choose not to chase it. It's earned that prize. Tonight's performance is a run-through for the Queen's Steward, who's rumored to judge plays based on the number of dramatic deaths and accidental snorts. You feel confident in both areas. Mid-scene, your wig slips a little, but only a little. You fix it with a practiced toss of the head that earns an actual gasp from the stage manager. You deliver your garlic allergy lines with perfect sneezes, extra nasal. The steward chuckles. You may survive court after all. Back at home, you remove your wig with reverence. It's warm, a bit sweaty, but otherwise intact. You brush it gently, then set it beside your garlic clove necklace. Safety first. You lie down, head still humming from powdered wigs and dramatic sighs, and drift off to sleep surrounded by garlic charms, costume ribbons, and the lingering scent of lemon soap someone spilled in your boot. You wake up with the strangest dream. You were married to your wig and having an argument about garlic. Probably not a dream worth interpreting, unless it's symbolic of your entire life in the theater, which, frankly, wouldn't be too far off. Your joints crack as you rise. You pull on your stockings, which are less fabric and more hope at this point, and tie your sleeves with strings so frayed they resemble something you might find in a bird's nest. Another day, another performance, another chance to not fall off the stage mid-line. The buzz at the theater is feral today. Word has it a courtier from the Privy Council is stopping by. No one knows if it's for pleasure or inspection, but either way, the stakes are suddenly high enough that people are spritzing their wigs with rose water and ironing their collars over open flames. Dangerous, yes. Effective? Also yes. Garlic is suddenly banned backstage. Someone read that the Queen finds the smell suspicious. Half the cast immediately begins chewing mint and panic. One guy gnaws a whole apple between scenes just to neutralize his breath. Another just panics and eats 3 cloves anyway because that's my process. Your own garlic clove necklace is stuffed discreetly in your boot. You're not ready to part with your protection charm. You also don't want it near your face when nobility are in the audience. It's a tricky balance, like playing romantic leads while trying not to sneeze powdered starch out your nose. Makeup today is heavy, more chalk than flesh. You see your own face in the mirror and barely recognize yourself. You look like a ghost who's really trying. A faded legend with perfect cheekbones and a mild onion scent. You nod at yourself approvingly. The show must go on. Today's performance involves several quick changes. That means wigs flying off, corsets unlacing mid-run, and someone backstage being yelled at for sewing a button on upside down. Theatrical superstition holds that upside-down buttons invite role confusion, an actor's worst nightmare. Historians still argue whether this belief originated in Elizabethan times or was retrofitted later by overly anxious costumers. Backstage is chaos. Your dressing area now has 3 people in it, a falsetto-heavy tenor, a muttering older actor who's convinced he's playing a tree, he's not, and a boy who keeps reapplying blush to his knees, just in case they show. You commend the effort. Garlic, though officially banned, makes a stealthy comeback by curtain time. One actress insists that rubbing a clove on her wrist boosts her stage presence. Another claims it stops hiccups. You overhear someone whispering that garlic deters spirits, particularly those of former actors who died mid-soliloquy and now haunt the upper balcony. You make a mental note to check for garlic smudges on the banisters tomorrow. The first act flies by, mostly because everyone's terrified of missing a cue. The audience tonight includes 3 powdered nobles and what looks like a Spanish diplomat who keeps checking his timepiece. You try not to stare, but it ticks loudly, like an insult. Midway through Act 2, your co-actor drops a key line and improvises. You're impressed. He somehow transforms a scene about land rights into a monologue about fishing with one's uncle. It works surprisingly well. Later, he confesses he was just thinking about dinner. Your big moment arrives, a romantic confession delivered by moonlight, well, torchlight, but you squint until it looks right. Your wig holds. Your breath is garlic-free. You finish the speech, turn, and hear applause. Real applause. Not just polite claps but genuine, echoing approval. You want to bottle that moment. The curtain closes. Backstage, it's a mixture of exhausted joy and gentle screams. Someone's wig caught fire for 3 seconds, but it was extinguished with someone else's cider, so it's mostly fine. The jester is singing. Someone else is sobbing into a prop loaf of bread. All perfectly normal. Later, after the post-performance chaos has faded, you walk home slowly, shoes in hand, enjoying the breeze. The city smells like baked brick, roasting nuts, and last night's rain. You hum one of the lute songs from earlier and pretend you're the hero of a tragic ballad. You could be. Back at your quarters, the garlic clove necklace is returned to its hook. You gently polish your wig with a scrap of linen and let it rest, curled up like a well-fed cat. You think about the queen, the court, the crowd, and how every actor is a little mad for loving this chaotic, powder-filled world. You pour yourself a little wine, the cheap kind that makes your teeth purple and your dreams extra vivid. You raise a toast to garlic, protector of lungs, ruiner of kisses, friend of the fretful. Tomorrow, the troupe plans to rehearse a new scene involving a sheep, a fake bishop, and a misunderstanding at a pie shop. You're not entirely sure how it connects to the rest of the play, but you've been in weirder. Remember the time you played a romantic lead opposite a puppet made of bread? Exactly. Theater life is never what it seems. The audience sees grace and grandeur, witty repartee and shimmering gowns. But behind the curtain it's gluey wigs, half-memorized lines, and just enough garlic to keep the nerves at bay. You curl up under your blanket, the sounds of the city fading into background noise. Somewhere, a cat knocks over a bucket. Somewhere else, a wig rests peacefully, ready for tomorrow. Your dreams tonight will be filled with velvet capes, misfired props, laughter under candlelight, and the soft rustle of garlic-scented pages turning in the wings. The morning arrives with a reluctant stretch of gray sunlight. You blink blearily at the ceiling, trying to remember if today's schedule includes a sword fight, a false beheading, or simply another monologue shouted from atop a painted papier-mâché rock. Turns out, it's all 3. You swing your legs over the bed and nearly step on your garlic clove necklace, which has somehow slid underfoot like it's trying to trip you. It's oddly symbolic of your career. Protective, annoying, and always there when you're about to fall. Today begins with rehearsal for the new play, still untitled, still chaotic, and featuring a rogue bishop who might also be a goose in disguise. The playwright swears it's based on a real pamphlet, though scholars still argue whether such pamphlets ever actually existed or were the 16th century version of prank journalism. Rehearsals are long, meandering, and only partially scripted. You find yourself delivering lines like, "Thou shan't feather my intentions, sir," with more sincerity than you thought possible. The director, who also plays the tambourine, approves. You're not sure if he understands the script either. Backstage, the usual smells float through the air: candle wax, old wool, stress, and of course, garlic. The official garlic ban lasted a solid 18 hours. Now it's back in full force. Someone's boiling cloves into tea. Another swears rubbing it on your elbows wards off bad exits. You don't even question it anymore. There's a new wig rotation policy, designed to prevent lice, scandal, and general confusion. Each wig is tagged with a small ribbon. Yours is red, which apparently means romantic interest. You wonder if your romantic interest is aware of this. He wears a blue ribbon, which stands for mischievous servant. Love is complicated. Mid-rehearsal, a debate erupts over whether the goose bishop should honk or speak Latin. The playwright insists on Latin. The costumer insists on feathers. Eventually, someone splits the difference and gives him a goose-shaped mitre. You begin to suspect the play may not be a hit with the Puritans. Lunch is shared under the stage: half-stale bread, boiled eggs, and a single apple sliced 12 ways. Garlic sneaks into the meal as always, tucked into pockets, rubbed on crusts, hidden like treasure. It's theater's worst-kept secret. Garlic makes everything better. Even slightly green meat. Someone reads a pamphlet aloud during lunch, a tirade by an angry bishop denouncing the ungodly mimicry of stagecraft. Everyone boos. The pamphlet is then used to wrap someone's cheese. It's the circle of life, Elizabethan style. You practice your final monologue for the third act, trying not to trip over the phrase, "By thy trembling confessional goblet." It's tricky. The tongue does not want to cooperate, especially when you're trying to emote and not accidentally spit on the audience. Projection is a curse and a blessing. Back in costume, you help a younger actor adjust his oversized doublet, which he insists is haunted. He says it sighs when he's nervous. You lean in and hear it creak slightly. Probably just starch. Probably. Evening descends with a blur of candlelight and whispered prayers. The audience trickles in: merchants, students, a suspiciously silent nobleman who looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. You adjust your wig, check your breath, and hope your sleeves don't betray you. The curtain rises. Scene after scene tumbles out: mistaken identities, poorly timed entrances, and one very committed boy playing a goose bishop with remarkable solemnity. You're impressed. He might win an imaginary award. Your garlic necklace is tucked into your cuff tonight, a silent good luck charm. You nail your monologue. Every syllable lands, every gesture hits its mark. The audience leans in, breaths held, until the moment ends in scattered applause and one loud huzzah from the back. You bow. Your knees crack. After the curtain falls, you all collapse into the wings. Laughter bubbles out, even from the grumpiest members of the troupe. Someone brings out a flask. Toasts are made to theater, to garlic, to wigs that stayed put. You're sweating, exhausted, and weirdly happy. Later, back in your quarters, you peel off the layers of your costume like bark from a tree. Your scalp sighs with relief as the wig is finally lifted. You run a damp cloth over your face, removing the last of the white paint. You look like yourself again, or at least someone adjacent. By candlelight, you jot a few lines of verse on a scrap of parchment. Nothing formal. Just thoughts. Something about goose bishops and garlic rituals. Maybe it'll turn into a play someday. Or maybe it'll just be a secret joke you carry with you when you stand in the spotlight. As you climb into bed, the moon spills through the cracks in your shutters. You let the night air settle around you, sweetened by distant fig trees and a neighbor's chimney smoke. Tomorrow will bring another performance. Another wig. Another round of garlic-based decisions. But tonight, it's quiet. You stretch out beneath your thin blanket, listening to the creaks of the beams above, the soft groan of the city settling into itself. The theater sleeps. The props rest. The ghost of that one jester who fell into the orchestra pit snores faintly in the next room. And for a moment, everything feels just right. Perfect even. You slow your breathing, letting the memories of candlelight and stage whispers drift gently into the back of your mind. The theater is quiet now. The wigs are resting peacefully in their boxes, powdered curls undisturbed. Costumes hang like sleeping spirits, waiting patiently for the next act. The garlic clove, your old companion, sits on the windowsill, catching the soft moonlight. No longer warding off ghosts or judgmental courtiers. Just resting. Like you? Outside, the city hums a softer song. No shouting vendors, no clattering hooves. Just the occasional sigh of wind between alleyways and the creak of shutters as dreams slip in like candle smoke. You imagine the audience too has settled down, their minds still half entangled in goose bishops, mistaken love, and powdered drama. Your limbs feel heavier now, but not in a burdensome way, more like you're being gently pressed into the mattress by centuries of stories. Of shared wigs and backstage secrets. Of laughter behind curtains and quiet sobs in dressing rooms. Let yourself float there, wrapped in linen and memory. Let the rhythm of Elizabethan chaos fade to a comforting hush. The stage is dark, the script is closed, and you've played your part beautifully. Sleep comes slowly, sweetly, like an encore you never had to ask for.